so seriously and to see God's grace all around them. He turned water into wine, for one thing, and he created a huge party out of just a couple of loaves of bread and some fish. And he made fun of all the stuffy people who thought that they were better than everybody else. In fact, you know who Jesus reminds me of? Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny. Oh, Pastor Shane, how can you say such a thing? Bugs Bunny, that's ridiculous, you might say. And I'll say, you're right. Because Bugs Bunny was a lot like Jesus. He made fun of the people who were powerful. He made fun of men with guns who were constantly after him. Time and again, Bugs used nonviolent, clever ways to foil their plans to get to him. Through wit and cunning, Bugs always finds a way to disarm, there goes a trickster right now, to disarm Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam. Their guns explode in their faces, they trip all over themselves, and they usually fall into their own traps that were meant to ensnare Bugs. Well, that's exactly what happened with the people who were after Jesus. He used clever, nonviolent ways to disarm his enemies, and he always was outsmarting them and got people to laugh at the ridiculous pomposity of their leaders. And he got them to fall into the traps that they set for him. The biggest trap of all was the cross. And it's sort of like Yosemite Sam tying Bugs Bunny to the high dive and making him dive over a tiny barrel of water down below. In the same way, the soldiers put Jesus on the cross and crucified him. But on Easter Sunday, Jesus pops out of the tomb and says, "Surprise! Guess what? I fooled you after all. Not even death can hold the love of God." And when Yosemite Sam is sawing his way across that diving board, and it looks like Bugs Bunny is going to plummet to his death, the rest of the platform falls, and he is suspended in midair. Now, Bugs Bunny then gets out his carrot and he says, "I know this defies the law of gravity, but you see, I never studied law." I know that the resurrection defies the laws of, well, everything. The laws of nature, the law of sin, the law of death. But you see, God doesn't study human laws. And it isn't bound by the powers of evil. In Jesus, God fools even death. Only as fools can the cross save us. That's a line from a book, Preaching Fools. The resurrection is meant to open us up to new possibilities, new ways of seeing things, so that we can move from the old age to the new age. Comic relief. So, what surprises is God doing among us today? And what does it look like when the trickster Jesus shows up and creates new hope, new community, and new joy? Well, as you know, this past week we lost our beloved Rich Huff. Now, Rich, if you haven't met him, he was a jokester all the way around. He was always teasing me, always making fun of me, always badgering me. I remember the first time that I visited him at Riverwoods when he was in rehab. And he was there, he was laying in bed, and Alice Ann was there with Karen and Kathy. And, you know, he might have been lying in bed, but he was really a stand-up comic. Because he had himself an audience, and he was throwing one zinger after another at me, and I was throwing them right back at him. And the girls are over there just giggling and giggling and giggling. And he knew he had an audience, and he just played it up. But Richard was very serious about his faith. He told me that Jesus was healing him. That he had seen Jesus there in that hospital in the rehab. And he never doubted God's care for him. We were all so overjoyed last week on Easter Sunday when we were celebrating the miracle of his recovery after the house fire that left him with damaged lungs and organ failure and sepsis. His recovery was like an Easter surprise, an Easter miracle that we celebrated with great joy last week. But now here we are, a week later, and it seems like the joke is on us, because Richard died. And it seems like death has had the last laugh. We don't understand why or how it happened. We have a lot of unanswered questions. And today it just seems like his miraculous recovery is nothing but a memory. But it is that memory that invokes the trickster Jesus. The recovery of Richard from the brink of death was a sign that Jesus is alive, the Jesus that he believed in, and that miracles do still happen. What I saw in that hospital room last week was not just a man fighting the good fight to come back to the land of the living. I saw a gathering of his family and friends with the trickster Jesus moving among us, breathing on us, and filling us with laughter. We laughed there in the hospital room when we should have been crying. We were laughing. And that kind of laughter and joy can only come from the risen Christ. Of course, here we are a week later, and we are planning his funeral. And some way people may look at us and say, "You were fools. You were fools. What difference did it make? It's all for nothing now. You were all just fools." And isn't that just what they say about the church? We are fools. We Christians are fools. Jesus' light is nothing in the face of darkness, people will say. So what if Jesus was resurrected? There's so much evil in the world. What does it matter? The law of death has trumped the law of life. But you see, God doesn't study those laws. Christians sing songs of joy, and we use a little bit of water in baptism, and we eat little crusts of bread and drink a little bit of wine from tiny little cups, and we're generous and compassionate with our neighbors, and we laugh, and we juggle, and we tell jokes, and we erupt into the Easter laugh, because that is what sustains us. It surprises us with God's grace, even after the Yosemite Sams are climbing up the ladder to come up and saw us off and drop us down. It is in that spirit that we laugh today, even in the face of death. It is in sure and certain hope of the resurrection that the fundraiser plan to help Richard in his recovery will now be turned into establishing a memorial Christmas Child Fund, because Rich played Santa Claus and he loved giving joy to children. So we're going to carry that on in his name, and we're going to identify families that are in need and help provide Christmas presents for them this coming Christmas. And our kids are going to learn what it truly means to have Jesus' Spirit during Christmas time. So we will keep the love and the spirit of Rich alive through that, and the love of Jesus alive by helping these children and these families that are struggling. The man might be dead, but the spirit lives on. Can I get an amen? Amen. So what I say to you is, go ahead and laugh, and live, and love. Go ahead and tell jokes and make fun of the devil who thinks that he's getting the last laugh. Go ahead and giggle at the demons who think that they have control over God's world and God's people. You just smile when death comes huffing and puffing up that ladder like Yosemite Sam saying, Friday, but God's Sunday morning cartoons are just around the corner, and the Trickster Jesus will always have the last